Hey guys, my name is April Davis. I'm here today to tell you a story of struggle and redemption. I'm 41 years old. I'm already getting emotional.
It's okay. It's okay.
This is my first time to ever do this, so just please pray for me.
You got it, girl. You got it.
I'm 41 years old, and I was born and raised in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I had a very normal childhood. My grandparents and my parents made sure from a very early age that I was always in church every Sunday. At the age of 10, I got saved and started my relationship with the Lord. During my teenage years, I was very active in our youth group, and I was in church every time the doors were open. I vividly remember having a strong relationship with the Lord in my early teenage years. I was raised up with grandparents, aunts, and uncles that had problems with addiction. So I was very aware of what it was, but I never thought I would turn out like them. I watched my grandfather go to prison when I was 10 years old. And I remember thinking, I never wanted that to be me. From a very early age, from the time of having my first memories, I can always remember struggling with a food addiction. I was always the fat kid at school that got made fun of. By the age of 10, I was severely overweight. By the age of 14 or 15, I weighed almost 300 pounds. At the age of 15, I started going to a gym called Curves for Women, trying to get my weight problem under control. In a year and a half, I had lost over 110 pounds. I remember going back to school after a summer of being home and noticing that everyone treated me so much differently.
Yes, they do.
People weren't making fun of me anymore, and they actually noticed that I existed. By the time I graduated from high school, I had made a goal for myself to go to college and become a fitness trainer because I wanted to help other overweight kids like myself and maybe save them from some of the bullying that I had gone through. I started college in August of 2003. It was a new beginning for me, but like Stephanie said, I had a newfound freedom that I didn't have while living in my parents' home. This is when I started dabbling in drugs and alcohol. I was doing what all the other kids around me were doing. I had stopped going to church because I wasn't at home anymore under my parents, who most of the time made sure we were always present in church. I was drinking heavily almost 3 nights a week and started dabbling with drugs. I was experimenting with anything that was put in front of me, including cocaine, methamphetamines, ecstasy, and various forms of hallucinogens. At the age of 19, I lost my grandmother to an Oxycontin overdose. The day before Valentine's Day, I had gone to visit her. My grandfather, who was paralyzed from the waist down, was prescribed Oxycontin. I had gone to their house that day with the ulterior motive to steal some of my grandmother's pills. I had never taken them, but I had found out through a friend how much they were worth and if I sold them on the streets. So I went to their house and offered to go pick up his prescription. When I got back with the pills, my grandmother counted them, and of course they were short. I convinced her that the pharmacy had shorted her. I also sat her down that day and explained to her that my family and I all knew that she was taking his pills, and I begged her to please stop. Of course, she denied taking them to me. The next morning, we got a phone call that she had passed away. I was the last person besides my grandfather to see her alive. This is when my addiction really began to spiral out of control. Around this time is when I met my children's father. Our whole relationship was based on and started with us getting high together. He was an atheist and did not believe in the Lord. So most of our time together was spent partying and getting high. Shortly after we met, a doctor had written me a prescription of Lortabs because I had a staph infection in one of my eyes. This one prescription of painkillers turned into a severe addiction to painkillers. Our relationship lasted 11 years, during which we were using very heavily together. My painpill addiction had turned into an IV drug addiction. Shooting up became my preferred way of getting high. I always managed to hold down a decent job, but I would always eventually get fired due to my drug use. I worked at what was then known as Sailor South in their call center in Meadville and was dismissed from there for failing a drug test. I also worked at Regions Bank, the Buyer's Guide, and Wood Forest Bank. But when it came to my job, my addiction always won. During these years, I went to several different treatment centers such as Pine Grove, Home of Grace, and Wood Lake Addiction Recovery Center. I would never make it more than one day out of treatment without taking a drink or getting high. In 2010, my children's father and I lost a very close friend to us to a fentanyl overdose. We were all using fentanyl and getting high, and he had done the same amount that I did, and he died and I didn't. A month prior to him dying, we had lost another friend due to a methadone overdose. It felt like everyone around me was dying, and it still did not scare me enough for me to get clean. In 2011, I had my first child, and he was born addicted to pain medication. I had tried to stop using while I was pregnant and could not keep it. After I had my son, I slacked off on the pain medication and started using Xanax. My addiction to Xanax quickly got out of hand, and I was taking at least 15 2-milligram Xanax a day. I ended up going to treatment at this time, and when I got home, I got pregnant with my second child, my little girl. I had already began using again shortly after I got home from treatment. During my pregnancy with her, I was using opiates and methamphetamine. I went into labor with her a month early at home. My labor had been induced by the methamphetamines that I was using. I had been up all night having severe pains, but refusing to go to the hospital because I knew I couldn't pass the drug test. That morning, I had decided to finally go ahead and go to the hospital, and my water broke as I was getting out of the bathtub. I made it about 10 steps to the dining room, and I delivered my baby girl. My best friend was there to help me deliver her. CPS got involved because of the drugs in both of our systems. My mom had to bring my daughter home from the hospital because they would not release her into my care. They told me I would have to pass a hair follicle test to bring her home, which meant I would have to stay clean from all drugs and alcohol for at least 8 weeks. I lived at my parents' house during this time so I could take care of my daughter. This time I didn't have the luxury of running off to rehab to get clean. I had to take care of my daughter, who was a premature baby that had severe colic, and I had to get clean on my own. I did get clean during that time and was able to bring her home. Shortly after bringing her home, I began using methamphetamines again. Eventually, we decided it would be best to sign guardianship of our children over to their daddy's parents. Our kids went to live with their grandparents at this point, and we decided to go live with them. Their daddy and I eventually ended up separating. He stayed at his parents' house with our children, and I was left to my own devices and on the streets. This would begin a period of over 3,285 days that I would spend without my children. My son was 5 and my daughter was 2. When I left their daddy and my children behind is when I ended up moving in with a new boyfriend / drug dealer, and there was always a supply of drugs around. There would be times I would get to see my kids, but that was only when I appeared to be trying to get myself together. No one knew what was really going on behind the scenes, which was a life filled with drugs. After about 2 years, that boyfriend and I both ended up in jail. I was quickly released, but he was a repeat offender, and he did not get out. By the time I got back to our home, everything I owned had been stolen, and this was the beginning of me being homeless. Sometimes I would stay at different people's houses on the couch, but most of the time I was only allowed to be there long enough to take a shower. There was a period of time I would stay in a shed that one of my friends had on a piece of property. The shed provided literally a roof over my head, and that was it. There was no running water or electricity. There were some nights I would spend in the woods with no blanket, pillow, or flashlight. I remember being terrified one night. I was lost in the woods in a briar patch, and I could not find my way out because it was so dark I could not see my hand in front of my face. I also spent a period of time on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I actually went down to the coast to help a friend get her house ready for CPS inspection because she was trying to get her kids back. So I spent a week there with her on the coast, repairing her house, and she decided that she was going to run off and get high. And when she did, she started losing her mind, and she ended up leaving me in Bay St. Louis with literally the clothes I had on my back. I was left in a town where I did not know anyone, and she left me on the street with nothing, not even a cell phone to call anyone for help. This was the beginning of about 9 months that I spent on the coast. While there, I stayed with people I had met on the streets and in the casinos, and stayed on their couch most of the time. While on the coast, I went through a lot of traumatic events, including being drugged and raped, and also being hospitalized with a staph infection on my face that nearly killed me. Finally, after 9 months, I was longing to at least be in the same town as my children, so I begged their father and his girlfriend to come and get me. They came and got me, but when I got back to Lincoln County, I had no house to come back to, so I was dropped off on the side of a country back road. My family was done with me, and I had shut everyone out in my life that had ever tried to help me. I always chose drugs over anyone and anything. After being homeless for about 3 years, I met my husband now. He was also a drug addict, but he gave me a roof over my head, and that was something I had not had in 3 years. There was a lot of fighting, drug use, chaos involved in our relationship. Even at my lowest, though, I always knew that God was with me. Some days I would just walk down the road and talk to God and just beg Him just to change my situation. There was a lot of domestic abuse between my husband and I, and that also ended up with both of us in jail. I have been arrested on 3 separate occasions for felony drug charges. I was bonded out of jail after the first 2 times that I was arrested. When I was arrested for my 3rd felony possession charge, my chances, or as some would say, my get out of jail free cards, had run out. The judge was tired of seeing me in his courtroom and gave me a $50,000 cash bond. This meant that it would cost $50,000 cash to get me out, dollar for dollar. Usually when you bond out of jail, you only have to pay 10% of what your bond amount is, unless they give you a cash bond. So I was sitting in Lincoln County Jail for 6 months because no one I knew had $50,000 just laying around. Finally, after being there for 6 months, the judge agreed to lower my bond to an amount that was affordable for my husband to pay. I was let out of jail at this time and started pursuing getting put on drug court for all my felony drug charges that I had accumulated. I knew that I did not want to go to prison. 6 months in the county jail was enough for me.
Yeah.
So when I got out of jail, I stayed clean for about 4 months and started trying to get my life together. During those 4 months, my husband would relapse, and he ended up at a treatment center called Friends of Alcoholics in Jackson. In October of 2022, I did end up on drug court for my felony charges. Let me just stop and explain to you exactly, for those of you that don't know, what drug court is. Drug court's a program set up to where you have to call a phone number every day and check to see if you have to go and take a drug test. Every day. You never know until you call if you're going to have to take the test or not. And you usually end up getting tested 2 to 3 times per week randomly. If you fail a drug test, you're usually arrested immediately on the spot and taken to the county jail. Each time you are arrested for failing a drug test, your time in jail gets longer. You also have to attend an outpatient treatment program on the weekends for drug court. The day I went and got sentenced to drug court, I had relapsed by then, and I was high on methamphetamines. I was so high that I could not even speak words to the judge. All I could do was nod yes and no at him. I kept promising myself every time I would get high that this would be the last time. I only passed one or two drug tests the whole time I was on drug court. I was put in jail multiple times because of my using. At the beginning of December of 2022, I walked in the drug court building and I told the officer there that I could not stop getting high. I begged him to please just put me in an inpatient treatment center somewhere so I could get some help. His answer to me was, go home and spend Christmas with your children and we will revisit this after Christmas. I knew in my heart at that moment what was about to happen. I spent Christmas getting high and laying in the bed by myself. I had lost all hope at that point. I had lost my job. I had no way to pay my rent at the 1st of January. So I packed up everything I owned and I got in my husband's truck and I left for pavement. I decided to run. And I ran back to the Gulf Coast where I was homeless yet again. I was on the coast for about 1 month and I was barely surviving. On January 27th of 2023, my mom had PayPal me $50 that morning. So I decided that I would make a trip to the casino and try to stretch my money.
That worked out.
I was on the way to the casino on Highway 90, and I came up on a roadblock going into Bay St. Louis. I knew I didn't have a driver's license, and I knew I was running from the law. And when I came up on that roadblock, I had to make a decision. That split moment. Was I going to go through that roadblock and go to jail? Or was I going to try to run one more time? Well, I decided to run one more time. And, because my mama said I've always been good at running. So I did a U-turn in front of the police, and I took them on a high-speed chase on Highway 90 on the coast, from Bay St. Louis all the way to Gulfport. After the police had flattened all my tires on my vehicle, I was forced to stop. I was riding on the rotors, and I knew it was finally over. I remember the feeling I had when I stepped out of that truck and I put my hands up.
Come on.
It was a feeling of peace and relief.
Come on.
I had begged God to help me and change my situation, and this was it.
Yep.
I've always been one to be hard-headed and do things the hard way. So I went to Harrison County Jail that night, where I was charged with 14 misdemeanor charges and 1 felony. And something different. I never wanted to experience the chaos that I had been through in the previous 10 years again. I had always gone the right way. It was instilled in me as a little girl when I had accepted Christ. I just always ran from it. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Come on.
That was my moment of true surrender. I remember being in prison and having that moment of clarity where I said, God, please take the taste of drugs out of my mouth. And to this day, he has. Amen. I have not had one day since I came home from prison where I didn't want to get high. I got out of prison in June of 2024 and I never looked back. I was allowed to parole out to the treatment center that my husband had gone to because he had gone on staff there after he completed the program there. God was working while I was in prison and didn't even know it. When I got home from prison, I actively started looking for a job. And y'all, this is nothing but God, and this is nothing but God. I paroled out, and I went to live at that treatment center. And my husband's disabled, so I was like, one of us got to have a good income. You know, we can't do this. So I got on Indeed and I started scrolling. And I've always done office work, so it came up that a place 2 miles down the road from the treatment center was hiring somebody in the office called Gotta Go Reynolds. It's a porta potty place. So I told my husband, I said, hey, this place down the road is hiring. It's like 2 miles up the road. He said, yeah, I know those people. They let some of the guys from the treatment center come to work for them. He was like, get in the car, I'll take you up there. And I was like, I just got out of prison 2 weeks ago. I ain't going nowhere. And he said, no, get in the car, I'll just run you up there. So I got in the car, and he drove me up there, and he pulled into the driveway of the business, and he looked at me, he said, now go in there and get a job. So I did. And they hired me 2 weeks out of prison because I walked in there and I told that lady exactly what I just told you.
Come on.
And, you know, the treatment center that we were living at was a Christian-based facility, so I got to actively start serving the Lord as soon as I got home.
Yes.
I got to start, it is a men's facility, but I got to start ministering to these men, you know, even just being in church with them on Sundays. So, I've been clean for over 3 years now. I'm back home.
Yes. Yes.
Living in my late grandmother's house.
Yep.
A mile down the road from my parents.
Come on.
My children have been living with me for over a year now. And I got the chance to be a mom again.
That's right. That's right.
With teenagers.
Welcome home.
I don't recommend it, but I still got a chance. God's got a sense of humor. I'm going to read this Bible verse out of my Bible, so I like it better. 1 Peter 5:10 says, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast.
Amen.
One thing I have learned above all is to have faith and trust in him, and he'll provide and make a way. Just because you get clean and sober does not mean that life is going to be a walk in the park all the time. I struggle every day. Just because I don't struggle with getting high doesn't mean I don't struggle. I struggle with normal everyday life now. Ever since the day that I cried out to God and asked him to take the desired use from me, like I said, I haven't thought about getting high again, but I will say I have had to learn how to cope with life And it's everyday challenges without the use of a substance. There are challenges I face every day, but I know that it is all part of God's plan, and He's going to take care of me and my family, and He has. I truly believe that's where the Holy Spirit comes in. That is where I have learned to have faith in Him through the challenges. I have learned to lean on Him when I'm stressed out or I don't know how I'm going to make it through something. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths."
That's right.
I've also learned through experience, the more I lean on Him, the more I see blessings in my life and all around me.
Yep.
I've seen God show me His grace and mercy every single day. Even on the hard days, I know God's going to make a way, and He always does.
Yep.
There's no explanation for my sobriety other than it was God's redeeming power that took my addiction away from me.
Yes. Amen.
I tried everything to get clean, but until I surrendered everything over to Him